Well, hello and welcome back to our Boost Your Business series. We missed you all in 2020, but are glad to have the opportunity to reach you virtually this year. I am Judy Parks, the 2021 president of the Greater Louisville Association of Realtors. As realtors, we've learned to adjust our lives, both business and personal, to adapt to changing world, economy, and state of our industry. GLAR is proud to offer these educational events as we know the importance of staying up to date on industry trends, market statistics, and business practices to ensure your business remains successful. We appreciate you joining us today in supporting GLAR's mission to provide benefits that enable our members to lead, build, move, and improve the real estate industry. During today's events, you can raise your hand or ask a question using the buttons on your control panel. This event will be recorded later for review. Before we meet our guest speaker, I'd like to introduce you to our 2021 annual partners.
Home Team Inspection Service, the area's largest home inspection company, has proudly served our community since 2009. Our teams of dedicated professionals, including many veterans, inspect thousands of homes in Louisville and southern Indiana each year. And team makes all the difference. Extra sets of eyes and overlapping duties means a more thorough inspection and better value for your clients. Multiple teams mean we are able to inspect your home when you need it. Radon testing, home inspection, termite reports, indoor air quality test. One call does it all. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation is one of the nation's top mortgage lenders. The Louisville branch anchors the company's presence in Kentucky's region and southern Indiana and is led by industry veterans Quinn and Julie Bernhardt. The location provides DKMC's world-class home financing service to home buyers, homeowners, real estate agents, and others in Louisville and beyond. L&N Federal Credit Union has been in business since 1954 and is open to everyone in the Louisville metropolitan area, as well as people in portions of southeastern and northern Kentucky. As Louisville's largest credit union, with over $1.6 billion in assets and an array of products and services, L&N can offer everything necessary for someone's personal or business finances. Set up as a financial cooperative, credit union profits are given back to individuals by way of better interest rates, lower fees, convenient services, and resource programs.
Now let's meet our guest speaker. Abhi Golhar is a 3-time nationally syndicated radio show host, entrepreneur, and investor who combines his love for building wealth with his passion for education and all things media. His favorite activity is buying rental real estate and ordering a grande iced no espresso Americano. He is also the host of the Think Realty podcast. Please help me welcome the most talented face on radio, Abhi Golhar.
All right, I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll leave it up to you. And then, and everyone here, my name is Tasha. I'll be here to answer any questions. So feel free to use the chat feature for that, or you can raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question too. So we'll leave it to Abhi.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much.
You got it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into presenter mode. So there are a couple things that, as we get started with the entire make it rain concept, I think there are a couple of things that I need to make sure you understand. Okay, number one is the fact that investing is a thing. You know, realtors must. I have this philosophy that realtors absolutely must invest in the asset class they are selling for a number of reasons. One is building wealth, but also number two is this entire thing of cash flow. Like, we need to make sure that given any economic circumstance that we have the cash flow to support the positives, the negatives, some of the challenges that we're having. And in the presentation today, I really want to make sure that you can see what ultimately you can do here. So guys, I want to make sure that we can share my screen and that we have the ability to do this. Cool. Can you see my screen yet? Show.
We cannot yet.
Okay.
Okay, yes, now we can.
You can. Okay. This will take me 30 seconds. Perfect. Okay. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thanks. Okay. So real quick disclosure as we get started here. Number one, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a real estate nut, absolute real estate nut. And I want to make sure that if you guys are going to invest in real estate in any capacity, then you definitely seek the counsel of somebody that understands your financial situation, but more specifically can also guide you along this path. It's a super, super important path that if you decide to embark on, you need to make sure that you're absolutely financially ready for it. And I will be monitoring the chat here as well. So feel free at any point in time, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, that we can go ahead and make that happen. I want to start out with the story because I hate this property. Okay, that actually is me in a flying ninja kick. And this property was the bane of my existence. And here's why. Number one, I lost a lot of money on this property, or potential profit. Here's the story. I love new construction as a real estate investor. I think about real estate investing and I think, you know, I want to take a property and fix and flip it, but I want to do some really extreme value add, like really, really extreme value add. And the challenge though, is you have to have a lot of things line up. And we'll talk about the 4 pillars that you need to know as a real estate investor, but more specifically, you need a lot of things to line up in order to make a successful flip happen. The first is the right lender. And in this case, and we'll go through exactly the questions that you need to know and that you need to ask your lender, but in this particular case, I had purchased the property, the land itself, for $250,000, okay? The idea was to build a beautiful 4-bed, 3-bathroom home in Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. You can actually check out the address a little later, or if you're already looking at it now, you can go ahead and laugh at me, unmute, laugh at me, it's not a problem. So the idea, buy for $250,000, build a new home for $250,000, and resell for $825,000 to $900,000. Okay, that was the plan, that was the dream, and I was really hoping for it to come true. Alas, it didn't. Here's why. The lender that I was working with, I didn't vet them properly. There were a couple of red flags here. Number one, this was a lender that was based out of Jersey. Nothing against Jersey, but red flag number one is they hadn't done a deal outside of their home state. Red flag number two, this lender was only a commercial lender. They were not a residential lender. Number three, this was their first out-of-state residential new construction deal, okay? Major, major, major issue. But I went ahead and said, yeah, we're gonna make this happen. It's all about teamwork, right? Well, this is why I hate this property. Again, the idea, buy for $250,000, renovate for $250,000, or build new for $250,000, and sell for what? $850,000 or $900,000. I ended up selling this property because the permits didn't come through on time and the lender lost confidence in the deal. So much so the lender said, you have to sell this property right now to somebody else that can finish it. I ended up selling it to a builder for $255,000. I made $5,000 on that deal. The builder made the rest. What you're gonna learn in the next couple slides is how not to make that mistake. And instead, you make the money yourself. So we talk about noise, right? We talk about noise and we talk about what's actually happening in the world today that prevents us from thinking like investors and only focusing on what we know and only focusing on what we want to focus on, which is your business, which is retail clients, which is your buyers, your sellers, et cetera. And there's a lot of internal noise, maybe some of the confidence things that we're working on. It's a major, major issue. And let's not forget COVID. We've talked about COVID. I hate talking about COVID, so we're not going to talk about COVID again. But it kind of feels like this guy. It kind of feels like there's been so much crap over the last year that has happened. And like I've been hearing about this new strain of bird flu. Have you heard of these meth alligators in Florida? You have a lot of senior citizens. I'm picking on your seniors. You have a lot of senior citizens that are just not taking the meds, flushing them down the toilet, and these alligators are eating these drugs, and they're becoming really aggressive, right? So that's the other thing that we have to be worried about. So if you've traveled to Florida, watch out for those meth alligators. And then we take a look at, okay, well, we have all this going on, and that's going to increase some level of financial stress in our lives. So the future of our nation as well is a significant source of stress. Last year, the APA conducted a poll. 83% of folks said, wow, we don't know where we're headed in the future for this country. That's another source of stress. And on top of that, the majority of Americans are also stressed about money, right? They just don't know what to do in the event of a financial disaster for themselves, or how do they plan for the future? And then you have weird gurus like this guy who's going to sell you something. Don't worry, I'm not going to sell you anything. But if you do want to read some four really good books, I do recommend these guys. But you also have, your fur bus tours of Louisville that will say, yeah, come on down and we're going to show you how to invest in real estate, but we're going to charge you $50,000 to do so. I don't really believe in that model because you're already agents. But here's the problem. The average agent makes about $46,000 a year, and the median income for agents, this is directly from NAR data, the median income for agents is $56,000 a year. Okay, so a couple of things there. My question to you is, what active agent only works 40 hours a week? Do you? I don't think you do. I think you work more than 40 hours a week, and yeah, you have so much stuff going on. You generally have two buckets of people that you're working with. You've got your check the boxers, and then you have divas like me that you're going to have to completely cater to, right? Before we even go see property, I need a blue bowl of M&Ms, stuff like this. And that takes more than 40 hours a week. That's probably 60 to 80 hours a week. So what do? You have to meditate and be like Yoda a little bit, right? Okay, what's the solution here? I've got all this stuff going on in my world, and I have all this stuff going on in my life, but I still have to figure out a way to build long-term wealth. I've got a lot of stuff going on. I still have to figure out a way to build long-term wealth. So what do we have to do? What's the solution here? What's the solution to long-term financial security for me and my family? I've got to think like an investor. And that's it. That's the only solution. If we're not thinking like an investor with our money, then there's no possible way we're going to achieve what we want to achieve. You work really hard every single day for your money. And my belief is that your money should be working equally, if not harder, than you do. So some of the challenges, though, that we find is, listen, change is constant. Calendar's king. And a lot of real estate agents don't feel that they have a lot of sense, that they know enough about investing or that they want to invest. Tracking trends and changes in the marketplace, also a very major deal. And most importantly, your investing personality, because even though we might have the money to invest, how do we know that that's the right move? How do we know that's the right move to even begin with? And then we start doubting ourselves. But let me prove to you that you already have what it takes as an agent. These are on the left, these are all the things you already do: social media marketing, offline marketing, lead gen, paperwork closings. You have so much stuff that's going on in your world. But you know what? That leads me to believe that you're working hard and you're focused all the time. But when we boil that down to a couple of core characteristics that you're good at, it's these. You're creative, you're attentive, you understand data, and you know how to market, whether it's online marketing or offline marketing. Your CRMs give you that leverage, right? You can post on Instagram, you can post on LinkedIn, you can post on any kind of social media, you can send out email campaigns. So you know how to market online, and you also know how to use word of mouth referrals. You know how to market offline, whether it's business owners, meetup groups, in person, etc. So these are core abilities you already have as realtors, and these are the same core abilities that you need to succeed as a real estate investor. So the bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, is you want to bet on yourself. If you're not betting on yourself every single day, you're not waking up in the morning every single day and saying, I'm betting on Abhi, or I'm betting on Susan, or I'm betting on me today, then I think that's a big major issue. I think that's a problem. Let's start with your investment personality. Are you a Wheel of Fortune person, or are you a Jeopardy person? And you can swap out Jeopardy for any like risk-taking show. Star Trek, maybe, perhaps, okay? Let me describe these two investing personalities, and then we'll go down the track here. If you're a Wheel of Fortune kind of personality, kind of like me, you want something consistent. You want income that's happening on a regular monthly basis. Okay, that's super, super important. On the right side, and in your gut, like, do you feel you're the Wheel of Fortune person, or on the right side, do you like taking a little more risks? Are you the kind of person that's going to jump out of a plane and build a parachute on the way down? Or in the case of Jeopardy, you're going to say, yeah, Alex, I will take, geography for 500, and you don't know the question that's going to be asked. Is that you? So maybe write down a piece of paper, or even in the chat here, what bucket do you identify with the most? The Wheel of Fortuners, or the folks that are playing Jeopardy on a regular basis? And it's okay if you fall into the passive income, the regular cash flow bucket, cool. If you fall into the fix and flip bucket, cool. I'll give you pathways on both on how to really maximize that in just a second. Let's start off with a quick secret rule. It's the 40-40-20 rule. If there's nothing else that you remember from this presentation, you should remember this rule. And it's essentially the allocation of your money, what you should consider doing with your money on a regular basis. 40% is in appreciating assets, things like stocks, ETFs, index funds. These things, betting on the United States long-term. I'm a huge believer in the United States of America, as are you. And to me, it is the best country in the world to be investing in. If you don't believe that, jump off this call. Just kidding, you're getting seat credits for it. But 40% of your assets, generally, I recommend in appreciating assets. Real estate can fit in here too, especially if it's a long-term buy and hold. The second 40%, consider passive income. A couple of things here. You can do private lending. You can lend money to a flipper. You can buy single-family rentals as part of your portfolio, which is that long-term cash flow play. Again, passive income, but real estate also plays in the first 40% bucket that we talked about as an appreciating asset. You can also invest in real estate debt funds. Okay, so something else to kind of think about and tinker around with as we're thinking like an investor. We have that investor hat on right now. The last 20% is a high reward. Bitcoin, Tesla, most recently GameStop. Okay, fortunately for me, I was a huge believer in GameStop ever since I was a kid. So get this, I owned GameStop at $7.50 a share. It's insane. I know, mouth drops, but I didn't believe, I would never have thought that GameStop would have done what they did. This is the high reward bucket. Salmon farming and Airbnb also, I think, is in a high reward bucket. If you want to ask about salmon farming, you can do so in the chat or a little later offline. But it's these high reward things that we would normally not take a risk on, and it's a gamble, right? Maybe even go to Vegas, fly over to Vegas. This is your high reward bucket. Let's talk through a couple baby steps on what you kind of need to do here. Step number one is being investment aware. We want to be very, very clued in on what's going on with our money in an investment. Number one, we want to avoid multitasking. I love multitasking, okay? I crave multitasking to the point where I'll be on the phone, I'll be texting and sending an email all at the same time. You can't do that when you're looking at an investment. There's just no way. You have to look at it systematically, and you have to be very, very, very clued in on what's going on. Number two, due diligence matters. The more questions, the better here. And number three, ask questions. Our due diligence leads to asking a lot of questions. If you ask maybe 1 or 2 or 3 questions for a single family rental that you're going to buy, you are going to lose the game so fast, you might as well not start playing the game. Okay, so being very aware of your investing strategy is super crucial. The pathways that I want to illustrate right now is 2 of them. Number one, starting with either rentals and then lending in 2 different capacities, using a self-directed IRA or joint venturing. There are going to be a lot of questions around these 2 slides. So you got questions, chat me up real quick. I'll throw them in the chat bot here. But what I suggest, if you have a little cash, okay, if you got maybe $30,000 to $40,000, $50,000 in cash, take a look at buying a single family rental where you should see anywhere between 13 and like 18% returns year over year. And then also take some money and lend it to people that are doing the flips. Lend it to people that are more successful than you are in a single family rental capacity. That can be a debt fund. That could be a world where you're earning between 10 and 12%. This is speaking to the Wheel of Fortune crowd. The two accelerators here are what's below the horizontal line, your self-directed IRAs and your joint ventures. Your self-directed IRAs are incredible. They're such an incredible tool. It's one of the wealth accelerators that I use, that a lot of rich people use to build wealth over time. I'll give you an example. If you have a self-directed Roth IRA, and if you acquire a rental property within a Roth IRA, ladies and gentlemen, the profit that you get every single month and the appreciation of that property is realized by your self-directed Roth IRA. You don't pay any taxes on that when you exit that property. You don't pay any taxes on the monthly gains on that property. So keep that in mind. A self-directed Roth IRA is one of the superpowers in your portfolio. Joint ventures, very similar to a Roth IRA, but it is a completely different strategy. Meaning, it's still a superpower like the self-directed Roth IRA I'm talking about, but as in a joint venture, you're doing none of the work. So you're like, Abhi, I love working with buyers, or I love working with first-time home buyers, or I love working with the senior that is looking at downsizing because they want a more reasonable home. Cool. Not telling you to stop doing that. Keep doing that. But this is your money's job, right? Your money has a job too, and that's to multiply. We got to make that money rain, right? So as a joint venture, if you enter a joint venture partnership, you can create an equity component and really draw down more profits at the end of the day. So if you joint ventured with a private lender, you're making more money. Your money is making more money for you. The second model that I want to talk about is for you Jeopardy players out there. You like to flip and you're making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a flip. Make sure to turn that investment gain after paying your taxes. Keep in mind your income taxes, your capital gains taxes. Well, also your income taxes are going up this year, right? So you want to be very careful on what you're reporting. But let's say you make $50,000 in a flip. You want to take whatever is left and invest it in a single family rental. It's how you win the game of Monopoly. You don't just flip and flip and flip. You buy and hold and you have others pay you. So buy, flip, buy, flip, buy, flip, and then buy a rental for a long-term hold. If you do so in a self-directed IRA capacity and also as a joint venture, there you go, you're winning the game. A joint venture in a flipping world looks something like this. And it's something that I do on a regular basis. Listen, I'm 5'5" and 130 pounds wet, okay? I know what a sledgehammer looks like, but I am not gonna pick one up. I'm too pretty to flip, right? I mean, just the entire hairstyling thing. Like I'm all about it. But I don't wanna do any of the hard work. So I will go 50-50 or 60-40 or 40-60 or 30-70 with somebody that's a pro that I can hand my money off to that can do all the flipping, do all the renovating himself or herself. Okay, there are 4 pillars of investing success here that I want to talk about. The first is deal sourcing. So as we're thinking about an investor, we kind of talked through the personality component, right? We talked about where we want to be. Do we want to be on the side of cash flow? Do we want to be on the side of fix and flip? What's most important to us here? Now that we have that figured out, let's identify where we struggle the most here. Deal sourcing, due diligence, your team, and financing. These are the 4 pillars that we need to ultimately be successful. Super, super important. Let's dive into the first one. Deal sourcing starts with a clear intention. Okay, this is the perfect plan for getting into a deal and seeing it through to completion. Super easy framework to follow. Deal sourcing starts with setting a clear intention. Calling lead gen sources every single day. A couple lead sources we'll get into in a second, but here's the perfect pathway. You want to call on your lead sources on a regular basis. If you're not doing that, as you know, as a real estate agent or a broker or an investor, if you're just not calling on leads on a regular basis or setting up virtual meetings or hosting a webinar or hosting a meetup group virtually, you're not winning the game. You're not going to get any leads, period. Next up, you want to find some financing. Without the right perfect plan here, you're just not going to see the success. So the third step here is to find the right financing. The last deal that I did, as I showed you, this one, well, not the last deal, the bad deal that I did not find the right financing. So make sure you line up that local lender. And it's not going to be the credit union or the community bank that we're going to, or Wells Fargo or Bank of America or any of the national banks. We're talking about very specific funding opportunities, funding lines to help you flip property or to help you buy and hold rentals. The next step here is to build your team, then sourcing deals heavily. You want to make sure you source and scrub those deals heavily. You're looking at 5 or 10 or 15 deals every month. Make sure to really understand this is where due diligence comes into play. And then ultimately you want to buy that single family rental or buy that flip. Okay, so that's the perfect plan. Let's talk about deal sourcing. Where do we find these deals? Where do the pro real estate investors find their deals? Well, number one, real estate wholesalers. These are the people that are probably blowing up your phone or blowing up your email on a regular basis asking you for comps. Okay, I'm guilty of it. I've done that until I knew better. But your real estate wholesalers are the ones that are sending out yellow letters. They're the ones that are calling on your off-market listings and saying, you know, hey Jane, hey Dave, hey Susan, are you interested in selling your home? Those are some really good people to find deals from because there's nobody involved yet. It's just them and the homeowner. Fellow agents and realtors, listen, there are a lot of folks out there in your space that are like, yeah, you know, this off-market listing, it's just not ready to be listed. Why is that? Oh, it looks like crap. Okay, wait a minute. So if the listing looks like crap and the outdoors isn't really tidy and it still needs a landscaping job and the roof is falling apart, run to that deal as quickly as you can. There are a lot of realtors and brokers and agents out there that will not take that listing on because they don't want to add handyman special into the description of that property on the MLS. But that's an opportunity for you. Private lenders. If you get to know private lenders in your area, these private real estate lenders will have properties that are just not going according to plan, whether it's a bad renovation loan that they made or it's just not the right fit for them. They have opportunities, especially today, that you can take over without even having to buy the property. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. Next up, construction crews. I'm notorious in Atlanta for riding around new neighborhoods, walking into properties where construction crews are actually still working and just saying, hey, my name's Abhi, I'm a local real estate investor. Who is your boss? And I'll get in touch with the construction crew manager, the project manager, and just invite them to take a look at my project. And while I'm there, I'll just say, hey, do you know any other deals potentially that are in this neighborhood, or who else is flipping here? Doing that off-market work really helps. Absentee owners is a really good thing too. If you have folks that don't live in Kentucky, but they own property in Kentucky, guess what? That's prime target for somebody that wants to sell their home. And then of course, GoSection8.com, one of my favorite sites to find tired landlords. Can you imagine the last year for these landlords? They have the moratoriums in place, the eviction moratoriums in place. They can't even kick out folks that aren't even, they're just not paying their rent. And even though Section 8, the government Section 8 program, they're paying rent on time. These tired landlords most of the time also have property that they don't make available for the Section 8 voucher program. So connect with some of these guys too. Okay. I recommend meetup groups. It's a really good place to find folks, and meetup groups obviously have gone virtual. It's an easy way to be in your pajamas and talk to real wholesalers, real agents that are investing, and of course, other real estate investors. Meetup groups, highly recommend. GoSection8.com is amazing. And we just talked about it, but I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive and show you specific screenshots on what I would look for. If you go to GoSection8.com and type in Atlanta, Georgia, or Louisville, Kentucky, what you can do is identify your price range, identify your bedroom and bathrooms, and all of a sudden you'll get a map. You'll see what's available and what's not available to rent, okay, to rent. And what happens is you'll get a 2-bedroom, 1-bath duplex that this real estate investor has listed for $1,300 a month. You get some additional property details, but you'll eventually also find the name of the owner. I'm not going to show the name of the owner here, but when you do, you pick up the phone and you say, hey, Alex, my name is Abhi. I'm a local real estate investor, real estate agent here. I'm not, I don't want to list your property. I want to buy it. Is it for sale? Or what would you do to consider it, consider listing it for sale? A really good way to find some tired landlords here, okay? Just incredible. One of my favorite data sources is a place called ListSource. And what this red arrow is pointing to is one of the strategies we talked about as an absentee owner. On listsource.com, you're gonna have to pay for the list. It's gonna be maybe 5 or 6 cents or 3 cents per lead, depending on how many leads you buy. But look at these options here to the right-hand side. You see absentee owned. You can click on where it says properties, include properties with out-of-state owners. You can also select whether or not you want trustee-owned properties, corporate-owned properties. You have a lot of selection here. So keep that in mind as a really good source of leads. Now, granted, you might get the phone number, you might get an email address, you might get a mailing address here. All of these are really good points of contact for potential homeowners you want to target and potentially buy your properties from, okay? This is a mailing strategy. The strategy here to get in touch with these people is to mail them a yellow letter, mail them a little postcard. I've had postcards work the best. Postcards are great. And make them really, really comforting and target their pain points as absentee owners, target their pain points. Okay, the other source here that I recommend, Craigslist. This is an example of a construction crew. Hey, reliable construction pro for remodel, addition, expansion planning, etc. I would call the 866 number and meet up with these people and say, hey, do you have any projects that you're working on? And do you know of any areas that are coming up? These pro contractors also are very clued into what the city is saying about expansion points. So getting in front of them and buying where the city is going to expand, guess what that means? Just more money and more profit and more long-term wealth for you. Let's talk about due diligence. Every time I talk about due diligence with real estate agents and realtors and brokers, it's a very touchy subject because we feel we know a lot about due diligence as agents to help the homeowners and also home sellers and home buyers, but we don't know, and we may not feel like we know enough when we're looking at buying an investment property ourselves. So this is what I look at. Okay, here's my checklist. I look at all these things, but the most important, I'm going to circle for you, school ratings. Everything starts with the schools. If a school that you find on school ratings is going down, that's probably a neighborhood that you may want to buy into, assuming that you know something about the school district or that school system doing something else and rejiggering it so that they start to increase in the ratings. Okay, school ratings are the #1 priority, as you guys know, for a home buyer to buy a retail property. They should also be the #1 indicator for you to buy an investment property. Okay. The other thing I'm looking at, jobs and industries. What happened to the city of Detroit in the 90s and the 2000s and the early 2000s? The city of Detroit only focused on one thing. That was automotive, right? Well, that's the problem with the city of Detroit. So what did the city of Detroit do? They shrunk the size of their city. Yeah, dangerous. And that caused a lot of property values to plummet. I was investing in the inner city of Detroit in 2004, 5, and 6, and I felt that pain. The city of Detroit just couldn't expend its resources to all of the city limits. So they said, you know what, we're going to shrink it. They just didn't have enough jobs and industries. So that has changed recently. Quicken Loans has come up and really transformed Detroit. And now they have a lot of different industries, biomedical, tech, consulting, and Detroit's now turning into a little tech hub too. It's not a bad time to be investing in Detroit, Michigan. Nonetheless, you want to look at jobs and industries and what is there. I'm also looking at the competition. When I'm looking at buying a long-term rental, I want to know what is the interior. What do the interiors of the properties that are currently being rented look like? The same thing on the flip side. If I'm flipping properties, what is my competition doing that I need to live up to? And maybe do a little more. Super important to take a look at the competition. Last but not least here, proximity to highways. They don't want to sue this person. So from that perspective, setting up a Wyoming LLC and having that Wyoming LLC own, okay, we're going to have the Wyoming LLC own the Kentucky LLC that owns a single property. If you have 5 properties, you're going to have 5 Kentucky LLCs and 5 properties that each of these LLCs will own individually. This way, if your tenant, for whatever reason, outside of your property insurance, your homeowners, your investment insurance, your investment property insurance that you're going to have, if your tenant says, hey, you know what? I slipped and fell down the stairs, I'm going to sue you. And because you're a big time investor now, we're going to make sure that we take all the other properties. Well, too bad, Skippy. Guess what? You can't do that. Why? Because that one property is in one LLC, and that's it. So keep this accounting structure in mind. If you want to take a screenshot of this, absolutely feel free to do so. I want to talk about financing, a couple more slides here, and I'll open it up for questions. Financing is crucial, right? Without the right financing, without the right money, you're not going to get anywhere as a real estate investor. Here's what the financing company is looking for. Okay, the financing company is looking for a couple of things, essentially hard money lenders. They're looking for the 3 top things. Number 1, your credit score. Number 2, any previous deals, any previous experience that you have as a real estate investor. And number 3, the cash that you have on hand. Now, does that mean that if you don't have a perfect credit score, or if you don't have any deals that you've done before, or if you don't have a lot of cash on hand, does that mean they still won't lend to you? No, but you'll probably pay a little more for your money. Okay, these are the first 3 things that hard money lenders look for. But they're also looking for the property location. They're also making sure that you have the right construction crew in place, because their success is your success, and your success is their success. So building a partnership with a hard money lender really helps you win the game long term. They also look at your project budget. They look at your after repair value and compare that to your acquisition price and your as-is value and your renovation budget. They want to make sure that, hey, they're not over leveraging themselves in this deal, and that you're not over leveraging yourself. We're not going to fall into the 2006, 7, 8 crap again, right? Like, we're not going to go get a loan that's going to pay for that, for the entire property, plus build in 6 months of payments, plus give us money at the closing table, because the market is that hot. The lenders have been bitten by that bug, and they're not going to let that happen again. So they want to make sure that you're not taking advantage of them, but then more specifically, you're not setting yourself up to fail. That's really, really important here. Now, not a lot of people talk about the questions you should ask your hard money lender, your financier. Here's some of the questions I recommend. Number 1, have they invested in property themselves? Remember that first example we talked about where I lost money because I did not pay attention to my lender? Yep, that's exactly right. You know what? You need to make sure that your lender has invested in property. Number 2, how quickly do they fund construction draws? In a world where deals, right now, there are deals that are on the sidelines because these financiers have one big escrow account and they're not tracking what money, what renovation money goes to what deal. There's a company that I'm working with out of Texas right now. They have $36 million in available capital, and they are just sitting on the sidelines because of this kind of activity. What's happening is you have 5 deals that need to be funded, and there are lenders out there that are making promises that, yes, we'll be able to handle all of these draws, but when it comes time to it, they are borrowing Peter to pay Paul to make these construction draws happen. Don't let that happen to you. So make sure that you understand very clearly how and when they fund and how quickly they fund. A couple more questions here. Do they charge high upfront fees? If you have a lender that's charging you $5,000 to work with them, that's like a scam from Nigeria, okay? Like, run away from that person as quickly as possible. Do they have their own capital? Don't get caught in the broker game. If you're being caught in the broker game, you are probably paying way too much. Instead of 4 or 5% origination fees, meaning for $100,000, if you're looking to borrow $100,000, you would pay 4 or 5% of that. Most lenders will only charge you 1.5 to 2 points of that $100,000 as an origination fee. So please make sure that you're following, you're tracking with them and you're asking them that particular question. Do you charge high upfront fees and do you have your own capital? And get references from previous flippers, previous borrowers, and speak with them and ask them, hey, how is your experience with this financier? And ultimately, I recommend using the American Association of Private Lenders as a resource. They're here to really monitor who's who and who's doing a good job, and they provide an ethics board for you to follow. So if you have any challenges or if you want to report any bad activity, just like the Better Business Bureau, AAPL is your resource. All right. I want to talk about a couple case studies, but I also want to make sure that I answer your questions. We went through a lot of information, and let's pause here for just a quick second. Let's answer some questions, and then we'll jump into this last case study, and we'll take it from there, and we'll wrap up. But any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. I love answering questions here because we're really breaking through some of these glass ceilings, and we're also breaking down our own investing personalities. And a lot of this seems really tough, but as you'll see in this case study, it's not as hard as it looks. All right, question time. Unmute yourself. We got this. We got a couple minutes here for questions. Hit me with it. Otherwise, I'm just gonna sing for like 30 seconds. Totally kidding. I'm not gonna sing. You know, warm up that that singing.
It looks like we have a couple questions in the questions field.
Sure. Let's see. Isn't there an income limit on having a Roth IRA? Yes, there is an income limit on having a Roth IRA. It's, I think, in the 200s or the high hundreds, but you can contribute to a traditional IRA and then convert it to a Roth IRA and pay the taxes today. So that's just, if you Google backdoor IRA or how to convert your traditional IRA dollars into a Roth IRA dollar, that's the way to do it. You can contribute as much as you can to a traditional IRA or even a traditional 401k. You can also roll that over and then convert that to a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA later down the road. Okay, next question here. Was the last show look at highways? Okay, so the look at highways, look at major intersections. When I'm looking at buying single family rentals specifically for a long-term hold, I want to make sure that whomever is going to rent that or whomever is going to be my tenant has access to highways, meaning has easier access to the city center if they're working downtown. Homes that are generally between 10 and 15, well, 5 and 15 minutes away from a local highway gives me the reassurance that I'm going to have a higher quality tenant. It's just one of the nuances that I found that when I'm looking at property, I always look for. And that's after looking at and researching the area and also making sure that the data, the actual job and industry data corresponds with that. I hope that answered your question. But if I have to drive 30 minutes to get to the highway to go downtown, I'm probably not going to buy in that area. Does that make sense? Cool. Where does a HELOC fit into residential real estate investing? Okay, so a HELOC fits into how much of risk and how bold you are as an investor. Here's an example. If my investment property has $100,000 in equity, am I going to go to my credit union and borrow $30,000 against it to go and have that $30,000 maybe serve as a down payment for property number 2? Yeah, maybe, depending on how comfortable I feel. But will I suck out all $100,000 in equity and go invest that $100,000 in 4 or 5 properties? Probably not. That's how you become asset rich but cash poor. The entire game here, ladies and gentlemen, is to be asset rich and also cash rich. Cool. Am I paying off the rental properties? I'm not following. Okay, I'm not going to follow the Dave Ramsey model of paying off early or speeding up the payoff, because then I don't get to capture the depreciation. I don't get to capture the interest payments that I get to write off. Keep in mind, I still get to write off 100% of the interest on that mortgage payment, okay? 100% of it I get to write off. I don't get to only write off a portion of it as an owner-occupied. That only happens in the owner-occupied space. In the non-owner-occupied space, I can write off 100% of that. So if I'm thinking like this in a business sense, then I want to make sure that I keep a 30-year mortgage on that. I have no interest in paying that off early. Good questions, holy cow. All right, let's get through this case study and then we'll finish up with a couple of questions. Birmingham, Alabama. I pick on Birmingham, Alabama because I love Birmingham, Alabama. You will get more dollars if you don't have a washing machine in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, that's why I love Birmingham. All right, here's a property recently posted, 5019 42nd place. It's offered for $63,000. It's a 3-bed, 1-bath, 876 square feet, built in 1949, right? One of the things that I'm going to do is look at the area and do the research that we just talked about, the proximity to highways, the school districts, the jobs industries, and Birmingham, Alabama, for all intents and purposes, let's assume we've done all of that research, is a good pick. All right, it's a good pick. This is just Redfin and Zillow research. All I'm doing is I'm looking at the comps. I'm looking at which properties are also for sale around this property. So that's kind of interesting. There are a couple, and if you can follow along here, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this guy. I'm looking at Birmingham Street. This is my box right here, all the way down to Vanderbilt. I'm kind of scrolling up 79. And I'm looking for properties that are within this little range to see what properties are comping out. So what properties have the rental rates that I'm looking at? Okay, I got a couple that are less than a mile away, 0.4 miles, 0.5 miles. And what I'm seeing is generally for a 3-bed, 1-bath house, I can charge about $795 a month in rent. Okay, so keep that number in mind, $795. Here's the math. So one of the slides we talked about all of the math. Here is all of the math. And if you want this calculator, happy to send you a link for it. But the assumptions are on the left side of your screen. Let's assume that I'm buying this property for $63,000. I'm putting 20% down, and I'm charging $750 a month in rent. Different than the $795 rental number, but let's play with the $750 a month rent number. And I'm assuming that my mortgage payment is at 4.5%. Okay, that's the mortgage rate. Over a period of 20 years, these are my green numbers. My cap rate's at 7.34%. A cap rate is nothing more than your net operating income for the property divided by your acquisition price. It's a good indicator of stability, okay? The internal rate of return on this property every year, 17.86%. Not bad if you are a Wheel of Fortune kind of investor and you're just looking for cash coming in. When I sell the property in 20 years, based on the appreciation, I'm making $129,000 and my total cash on cash return is in the 800% plus range. Okay, cash on cash, that's the 20% down payment that I'm talking about. That's huge. What does that mean? That means that we're using leverage properly. And the cash flow on the bottom right-hand side here is $130 a month. Pretty sweet. Let's look at something else. Again, say a little different conditions on the left side. I'm buying for $63,000, putting down 30%, and my rental rate is $675 a month with a 4.5% rate on my mortgage. This is kind of interesting. I'm seeing a lower return, IRR. I'm seeing a lower internal rate of return on my money, 12.76%. My cap rate's lower. My cash flow is $100 a month. Look at that. I put down more money though. Abhi, what happened? When we look at income producing real estate, I'm looking at one thing, income, and that drives everything. So even though we put more down, we're making less money. That's driving down our cap rate, it's driving down our total returns, and it's driving down our monthly cash flow. Everybody will get a copy of these slides too. So if you want them, just please ask. Here's an example of a bad deal. If I purchase this property at $68,000, why would I buy this property at 68 grand? Because I have way too much emotional bidding war mojo invested in the deal. Okay? If I'm buying this property for $68,000 and I put 10% down because I said, oh man, I need this property, need the property, and I'm only renting it for $650 a month, and my mortgage is 4.5%, I'm losing 10 bucks a month. My cash on cash return is out of this world because I only put 10% down, but it's the cash flow I'm paying attention to. I really want my cash flow numbers to be up. And keep in mind here on the right side, I have allocated 8% for a property management fee. I've allocated 10% in vacancy. And these are just good rules of thumb here to keep in mind. Your vacancy is 10% and your management fee is 8%. If you think that your vacancy is less than 10%, please do yourself a favor and keep your 10% vacancy as the number. Okay, that's super important there. Any questions on this calculator? And I know we're approaching the 11 o'clock time, but I want to make sure that I answer some of these questions for you. Any questions on this? Any questions on the rule of thumb? Can we go over maybe 5 or 6 minutes? Would that be okay?
Yes, of course, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Let me check the chat and see if we have some questions. Any questions? Look at that. Any questions? Unmute yourself. If you're typing a lot, that's okay too.
Looks like they're asking if you are willing to share your presentation.
Absolutely. You guys will get a copy of this, but you'll also get a copy of the book that I wrote that this presentation was inspired from. The name of the book is called Make It Rain, Real Estate Investing for Real Estate Agents. And all of this is broken down there too. Cool. So a couple rules of thumb here as we're closing out. Number one, I want to look at primary markets, secondary markets, and tertiary markets. But Abhi, what are primary markets, secondaries, and tertiaries? And why does that even matter? A lot of the activity, a lot of the HGTV activity, if you will, a lot of the retail activity is happening in the primary market. The primary market is defined as a market that has more than 5 million people. A secondary market is defined as a market that has between 3 and 5 million people. A tertiary market is defined as a market that has less than 3 million people. So if I'm investing in a primary market, what's happening? I'm competing with a lot of people here, far too many people. If I'm investing in a tertiary market, then what's happening? I don't have a whole lot of people that I'm competing against or I'm competing with. A secondary market, if I have Atlanta, Georgia, a secondary market is, you'll generally find a secondary market within a 30-minute drive from a primary market. A tertiary market, you'll find within an hour's drive of a primary market. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind here. Tertiary markets is where the game is right now. Lower cost of capital is required to jump into a tertiary market with significantly higher returns. Okay. Another rule of thumb for SFR that I take a look at, number one, my rental rule is 1% of the purchase price. It's the 1% rule we talk about. That's how much I know that I'm going to charge for rent. If my acquisition price is $100,000, then 1% of $100,000 is $1,000 a month. That's generally speaking what I'm going to ask for my rental rate. You'll have to do the due diligence, you'll have to do the homework and make sure that that rental rate though falls within line. Okay, super important that it's falling within line here. Your management fee, we kind of talked about that. Reserve 8% of rent every single month for your property manager, 10% a month for vacancy. Assume $800 a year in insurance, and your yearly maintenance is going to be about 1.5 times 1 month's rent. There's some good rules of thumb to follow when you're investing in single family rentals. when you're lending money, you got a little bit of money, you're lending money, whether it's $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, expect 10 to 14% returns on your money every year, nothing less than 10%. You're looking for experienced borrowers, not new borrowers, not your starry-eyed Chip and Joanna Gaines borrowers, your experienced borrowers that have been there and done that. You're looking for these borrowers to acquire properties to either fix and flip or buy and hold in B or C areas, and you should be okay with a moderate renovation, not a really heavy renovation, not the new construction deal that I lost out on in the beginning of this presentation, but a moderate renovation. Taking off the roof and going up a level, depending on your risk level, is okay. I think a light renovation, just get to the guts and the inside, get to the studs and do the renovation on the interior, maybe replace the roof if need be, that's okay. But those are my rules of thumb when I'm lending money in the real estate space. An investing pathway, we talked about self-directed IRAs here, and I'll wrap up. We talked about a self-directed IRA, and we talked about a Roth IRA specifically, and I cannot stress this enough. When Mitt Romney, here's a good example. When Mitt Romney was running against Barack Obama, Mitt Romney, everybody, the nation learned that he had like $99 million in his Roth IRA. Okay, $99 million in his Roth IRA. And I think one of the questions was, well, there's an income limit to the Roth IRA, right? Like, how did he get $99 million in his Roth IRA? Joint ventures. He joint ventured with other people and took all of that money and put it right back into his Roth IRA. But you can't just do this on TD Ameritrade or Vanguard. You have to set up, you have to go to a specific custodians. They have 20 or 30 custodians nationwide that you can go to. Custodians like a UDirect IRA or an equity trust or a New View IRA, et cetera. These custodians that are not your TD Ameritrade that allow you the flexibility to self-direct your capital. So that's how Mitt Romney got $99 million in his Roth IRA. It's absolutely insane. The second accelerator here is collaboration, joint venture with the pros. You take your money in your Roth IRAs, you joint venture with the pros, you throw that right back in, and you're good to go, so that you can focus on what you are best at. You're working with homeowners and working with home sellers and working with home buyers. Keep doing what you love to do and just put your money to work. Keep in mind, this is a wealth accelerator. This is your money working harder than you. Accelerator number 3, stay opportunistic, guys. It's all about your mindset here. If you think that there's not enough opportunity in the world, guess what? There's never going to be enough opportunity in the world. You're right. What you say, whether it's right or wrong, you will always be right 100% of the time, whether positive or negative. So stay opportunistic. It's the best type of investor mindset you can have. The fourth is turnkey single-family rentals. Turnkey gives you the ability to not even have to worry or deal with any of the renovation. What you get in turnkey is a property that is handed to you on a silver platter that is rent ready or already has a tenant. Turnkey single-family rentals. I have some resources here. Feel free to email me if you'd like, and all very unbiased. And I don't do referral fees or anything like that. I truly care about your long-term financial success. So if you're looking for turnkey single-family rentals long-term, feel free to let me know, and I'd be happy to point you in the right direction. And everybody gets a copy of the book. Like I mentioned, it's called Make It Rain, Real Estate Investing for Real Estate Agents. You can shoot me a quick email at hello@abhigolhar.com. And I truly hope that if there's one thing that you can take away from today, it's there's going to be a cost increase. Healthcare costs, cost of living, cost of food, cost of anything is going to increase over time. And the biggest takeaway here is money is a tool. How can we increase its power? And we can do so by investing in the asset class that we interact with every single day. So I'll open it up for questions. We rocked through the presentation. Thank you for being patient with me. I did not yeah, it's the Eastern Time, Central Time thing was kind of interesting, but I'm glad we got through it, and I'm here to answer any questions that you guys have. So thank you very much again. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this, and of course, put you on the path to what I believe is financial success. All right, let's open it up for questions, guys. I think we probably have a minute or two.
Yeah, looks like we have some questions on the questions panel.
Perfect. I am getting there. Let's see. All right, if you guys could actually read those out for me, that'd be really helpful. Oh, here we go. It was hiding. I found it. It was hiding behind my little thing here. Okay, I'm 24 years old. Sarah, you're 24 years old and you're thinking about investing in real estate. I love it. You've been in the business for almost 2 years. You're currently renting. What are your thoughts on buying a property, living in it while fixing it? Oh my God, yes, absolutely do that. It's one of the quickest ways to getting tenants and getting your foot in the door and your feet wet with dealing with people that pay rent, that don't pay rent, and experiencing what it feels like to be an investor. I started my investing journey when I was 18 and 19. And listen, you're going to make mistakes and it's okay to make mistakes, but start now. And I completely agree. Live in the property that you're fixing and then turn it into that long-term rental and keep doing it until you add to your portfolio. Jackie, you'd like a copy of the presentation? You got it. I'll make sure it's sent over to you. Scott, what are other costs? Scott, if you can unmute yourself, maybe give me a little more detail on that, that would be super helpful. All right, while I'm waiting on him, Jonathan asks, do you have spreadsheets available for your ROI calculations? Absolutely. Shoot me an email and I'll get you all the spreadsheets that you'd like. And Laura, how do you go about finding properties in tertiary markets? Who do you work for? Who do you work with to find opportunities? Laura, great question. In tertiary markets, I go to real estate agents. I will do a Zillow search. I don't have access to the MLS, right? So I will do a Zillow search. I will go to local meetup groups and find agents through word of mouth. That's the way that I find my real estate agents. I find my real estate wholesalers the same way. And I will absolutely knock on the doors of homes that are being renovated, and 1000% have no shame in walking in and saying, hey guys, who do I go to find more investment property, more real estate rentals, or more flip opportunities in this area? Hey Scott, are you there? All right, so we're still waiting for Scott. Tiffany asks, regarding rental properties, if the mortgage is in your name, should you be paying it from your business account or your personal account? Okay, Tiffany, great question. In this space, we are only talking about the non-owner occupied space. So if you have a hard money lender or a private money lender, they will never, ever, ever, it is illegal for them to lend you money personally, because then that's considered a conventional loan and they would be violating all sorts of rules, okay? So what you always want to make sure you have is an entity, a limited liability company, that this private money lender can lend money to. They're only lending money to non-owner occupied properties, and they're only lending money to entities, legal entities. They will never lend money to you personally, okay? Are foreclosures an opportunity for buying rental property? Okay, Phil, this is an awesome question, given the state of where we are right now. Here's the deal, okay? The deal is, everybody thinks there's going to be this massive wave of foreclosures. That's not going to be the case. Here's why. The banks won't let that happen. There's far too much equity that's built up. So what they're saying is we're going to roughly see 2.5 or 3 million foreclosures in the next year and a half or two. Okay, but I don't see that happening. Just because the folks aren't paying their mortgage doesn't mean that they can't sell the property and pay off what they owe and then some. We still live in a market where the new construction housing demand is still not even close to being met. And there's so much demand for even build to rent communities right now that this concept of foreclosures being an opportunity, I think if you're waiting if you're waiting to invest in real estate based on a foreclosure opportunity, I think you're missing the game. I think what you might be looking for is maybe a 2 to 5% decrease in overall housing value, which will probably happen, but it's going to happen in your higher value property, your properties that are valued between $500,000 and $1 million. It's not going to happen in your $80,000 to $150,000 property category. So I hope that answered your question, Phil. Wow, some seriously good questions. Phil, Louisville making it rain with the questions today. I like it. Nice. Impressive. Any other questions?
Scott, if you've joined us, you are welcome to, I believe Abhi had a question for you in response.
Yep, Scott, so the question is, you were asking about other costs. Is that in terms of flipping property? Is that in terms of rental property? If you can give me a little more color around your question.
Yeah, sorry. You had a slide up and it showed, I believe it was all of your expenses
Yes.
for a rental property.
Yes.
And other cost was in there. And I was just wondering what some of those other costs might be.
Okay, yeah, great question. That could be an HOA. That could be an emergency repair. That could be anything like that. So from a really easy rule of thumb numbers perspective, if you're buying an investment property, an investment rental property, and you're charging, say, $800 a month, you can just take 50% of that number and have that 50%, the $400 a month, just write that off as like mortgage, interest, any other expenses for your property. So it could be a permit fee. It could be small little things that you might have to just handle every other month. So anything can come up, right? Landscaping, for example, or maybe even an eviction charge, a cost of that. That can be expensive too. So your miscellaneous items that will just occur on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Yep, you got it. Okay. Any other questions? Hope this was helpful and kind of nudging y'all in the direction of investing in property and proving that you can actually make this happen. You guys have the info. You have the knowledge.
All right, well, thank you so much, Abhi. We will make this presentation available on our YouTube channel, and I will forward the last couple of questions to you to be answered. And we really appreciate the information you gave us today. This has been a topic that has been requested for the few years that I've been working here, so I think we had a lot of valuable information today, and we appreciate it.
Of course.
If you could just share so with any questions, is that the email address they should contact you at?
That's it. That's me.
Great. Okay. I will have the recording out for everybody by tomorrow, along with any information on the presentation. So we appreciate you all and hope you have a great day.
Thank you.